There. We should be live now.
Watch your fart.
I was hoping.
Alright, you're getting a lot of setup.
We are live.
It looked we're live. Every joke in a bar
This is almost a round table discussion, right? Make myself yes. How are we sounding?
Alright, why don't we get started?
Good. Doesn't go into my machine, but you guys are great.
And you ladies have the mic. Perfect. I'm talking loud so the guys can
I'm
hear me,
Stella, by
right?
the way.
You guys will get a good view of my ear.
See, I have batteries. Don't die. I have batteries.
You are.
Yes.
And these are right below you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's our life.
Yeah, they're like right below the screen, so that way you don't have to stare at my ear the entire time. Well, I just want to, on behalf of Broken Clock, as the brewery and the cooperative, I just want to welcome everybody here and say thank you for coming. Thank you to our panelists for volunteering their time and being here and sharing your stories and insights. I am Vicky. I'm just a beer tender now, actually. I was fan. But I tend to wear a lot of hats outside of here. I'm a pastor at a church in Brooklyn Park. So mental health is something that's dear to my heart as well. Just want to let everyone know that we're working to help end the stigma and to start conversations about mental health and to help anyone who is struggling to feel comfortable and to help them get the help that they need. So today we have released a Hefeweizen called How the Heck Are You? Which is so fun to say. And so you know, $1 of every beer sold today, as well as 10% of the sales to How the Heck Are You beer is donated to Infinite Ingredients. So we're supporting that great cause. So please drink up responsibly and bring a lot home with you as well. But we have our 5 panelists here to help with our conversation. And just so everyone knows, we have posted already, but just to reiterate again that we will be talking about suicide, we will be talking about sexual assault. So we just want to have people be aware of that and to be sensitive in case that might be triggering or difficult for someone. We wanted to let you know. But right now, I will hand off the mic figuratively to our panelists and let the five of you introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Elizabeth, or Beth. I'm passionate about mental health due to my own journey through mental health that started at a young age. And I volunteer, I just messed that up. That's okay though. I'm involved by leading multiple anxiety and depression groups at work, and then happy hour hangout here at the brewery that hopefully will start up again soon. And then I also do things at work and here, like brown bags is what we call them at work, to be a part of breaking the stigma.
Hi, my name is Maddie Johnson. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor, which is the fancy way of saying I'm a therapist. I work out in Rogers, and I'm a member owner of Broken Clock. And I don't do anything mental health related other than hanging out here sometimes, specifically other than my job. But that's That's kind of.
Here, we're gonna get tangled real fast. So I'm Katie Mudley. I'm the founder and executive director of Infinite Ingredient. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to actively support the mental and physical well-being of individuals working in the craft beverage industry through outreach, education, and access to resources. So we're in the midst of our launch campaign right now. We're still a relatively new organization, and we're founded in the spring of 2021. And once our launch goal is complete, we'll be able to begin offering access to mental health resources for every person working for a craft brewery in the United States. So super rad and super lucky, but we're gonna get there. So guys, you wanna hop in our awkward little inception universe here?
Good. We're fine. My name is Brady. Mental health is a passion of mine. A lot of it has to do with, all the crises that I'm personally gone through. Discuss me and my best friend Dan started a mental health podcast called Managing Life. Our focus is on men's mental health, but we feel like we have conversations that everybody can learn.
My name is Dan. I'm the other co-host of Managing Life on College of England. And like Brady said, we do a weekly, bi-weekly mental health podcast, and we dabble with a mix of men's mental health, but just kind of everyday things. We like to share experiences, stories, and have guests on that can kind of share relatable stories. And we feel as if we can reach one person, then we can help somebody. For me, mental health has been a major factor in my life since I was a teenager. And I myself am a survivor of 2 attempts. And this is just a way for us to do something to try to help in this stigma, and just try to help people.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing and introducing. So I'm going to jump in the questions. For anyone here in the chat room, there are QR codes on the table. So if you have a question, just scan the QR code, and then we can get your question into the conversation as well. So I'm going to start it off. How do you care for or consider your mental and emotional health? What is the impact of that? So I'll start with Maddie.
That is an excellent question. So how do I care for my mental health and what's the impact of that? If I could sum it up in one word, it would be pickleball. I care for my mental health by hitting up Lucky Shots down the road from here several times a week if I can. And I try and be involved in groups and communities and just have figure out where I can have a sense of belonging. I also attend my own therapy with a person that's older and wiser than I am, and find that to be incredibly helpful in my own practice. And I think beyond that, the impact of that is I'm just a more pleasant person to be around, and I can have a fuller, richer experience of life, and it's really rewarding when I get stuck or when I don't know what to do to have people and resources that can help me take care of my mental health. And I think good resources too are our bodies and our emotions, and those are two great sources of data that can kind of give us a clue as to how our mental health is doing.
Kate.
So as far as taking care of my own mental health, I'm trying to get a little bit better about consciously moving around and inhabiting my body. I think throughout COVID, it was really easy for everyone to be ooh, and got 2 feet removed from their own bodies and being scared to get sick and being scared to breathe around people and so there was kind of this detachment that formed. So I'm really trying to take a little bit more time to just get back into okay, life is happening, and I don't need to be 2 feet away from it. I also attend therapy regularly and have gone through a few different modalities for trauma-informed therapy, and that's been something that's been really, really important and really beneficial in being able to better inhabit my own body. And just the impact of that is like, I feel like I'm a lot, I show up a lot more fully for the other people around me and I'm able to, you know, by providing the support and tools I need to, you know, take care of myself, I'm better informed to be able to, you know, help take care of the people around me. So, and that really extends, you know, very deeply into the organization that I founded as well.
How about you guys, Dan and Brady?
Brady, we good?
Sure, I mean, for me, I gotta say I'm still figuring it out. There are a few things that I do to maintain my mentals, but, you know, I'm very much a rookie at this, you know, I still have my own issues. But a lot of it, honestly, relates to the spending time with my family. And doing the podcast is really almost kind of a form of therapy for me.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. The podcast for me has allowed me to speak about things that I probably normally wouldn't speak about, or allowed me to be honest with myself when I normally wouldn't. But honestly, it's just whatever will bring me peace. I mean, it could be listening to music, it's spending time with my family and my daughter, it's going hiking and staying on the farm. Really just kind of whatever I need for that day that will bring me peace and everything. And I know that when I take care of myself and I take care of my mentals, I'm not only just a better person, not a better friend, not a better husband, I'm a better father too for it. And I think that's just what's important is, you know, you're not gonna, you may not win every moment of your day, but those little wins that you can take stack up and they mean a lot.
Yeah, I like that. Take the wins and they add up. That's cool. Beth, would you like to share?
Currently, my mental health is day to day. Being our oldest son was killed in a motorcycle accident at the beginning of May, or end of May, May 26th. So mental health for me right now is very forefront and it changes day to day. Some days are great and there's no tears, and other days the tears are more than I can handle. Being true to those feelings and addressing those feelings is what I'm working on currently, and so far so good.
Yeah, grief is a journey. That's what I have in my profession.
Yeah, very much so.
Very much. All right, so how do we break the stigma of mental health? And I'll start with Dan and Brady.
You want me to go first?
You're up first there, because
I've been thinking about this question a lot, and I don't really know if there's one right answer. I think there's a collective of good answers. The one thing that has always stuck out with me when it comes to breaking the stigma of mental health is being honest. And it's either trying to be honest with yourself, or if you're looking from the outside into a situation, is recognize and understand that sometimes people just kind of go through things and we don't know what the limit of that is. And it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier just to be a decent human being than it is to be negative and be rude. So I think it's just really just being honest with yourself within the situation, whether you're the one going through it or you're the one looking from the outside in.
I feel like from my standpoint, my mentals started to become more focused and become better when I stopped living in a beautiful my mental state and realizing what I did contribute to my mental state. Don't get me wrong, there were outside influences and there were different things on the outside adding pressure to it, but you know, it's that release, that realization once you're actually able to put yourself and be honest with yourself, it was really freeing for me. And I feel like getting more and more people comfortable within their own skin, getting more and more people comfortable with, you know, it being okay to not be okay is really, it's that's the only way to do it. There's no quick fix and it won't happen overnight. But what we're doing here and what we're doing in our podcast and what all these groups are doing collectively, that's what is on the great extent.
So I feel that we're helping break the stigma by being here today and talking. We also break the stigma by talking openly about how we are affected by events, and we don't have to be present for an event to affect us. So a great example of that is 9/11. A lot of us are affected by that because family or friends or other people that were in New York at the time were affected. So to know that you can be affected by an event that has not happened to you is important, but being able to openly talk about that, I believe, is important as well.
Any other thoughts on how we can break the stigma?
I really like what Dan said about just being honest about like our own experiences with it. I think that is single-handedly probably one of the most powerful things that we can do. Is be willing to have those conversations, share where we're at, and be able to lay the groundwork for someone else to be able to say, yeah, me too, or I just started therapy recently also. And so, really that honesty piece of it, I think is one of the biggest things we can do. And being honest with ourselves and others, and those are two very distinct and very difficult things on their own. But if you can do those things together, there's a lot of power in that.
I think one of the things that add to that too, I mean, you made a really good point. It's showing up. I think just if you're able to show up, whether you were somebody who is an outlet for somebody, or you're somebody who wakes up in battles every day and you're doing battle stuff every day, and the hardest part is just to get up and start your day. I think showing up is a great way to start to end the stigma, because it just shows how strong you are as an individual. And it's not easy to just wake up and pop out of bed and get your day started. So you can take a little step and you take that first deep breath in the morning and you get your feet on the ground. That's a win. We talk about the little wins. That's a win. It's showing up. You're showing up for yourself. You're showing up for others. You're showing up for your family. And even with somebody who's battling something or struggling, just being there in some form, some fashion, to let them know that they're not alone. And like Brady said, it's okay to not be okay. We just can't stay there.
I don't know if this necessarily answers the question of how to destigmatize, but as a clinician, it's been so awesome to see in the last several years how much mental health is being talked about openly. And did I ever think there was a world in which there would be a collab between mental health and beer? I did not, I'm gonna be honest. And how awesome is it that this exists, and just in our culture and in our society, my perception is that there's been a huge shift towards being open and transparent. And our good old patron saint of therapy, Brene Brown, talks about how shame grows in the dark. And so the fact that we're here talking about it, that's actively making things better, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, great insight. Okay, so how do you help someone make it through a dark time? Or how can you help coworkers or friends that you see who are struggling? And we'll start with Maddie Whitman.
How do we help someone make it through a dark time? I think, as my colleagues above mentioned, showing up. And this is Minnesota, right? So we got Minnesota nice. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. We don't want to offend somebody. And if you get the sense that somebody is struggling, trust your gut. You're probably right. And checking in with people, you're not doing harm, you're not making things weird. And even if it does make things a little weird, good. That can build intimacy between people, and that can build connection. And so as far as helping a coworker that's struggling, if you're seeing or feeling that something is off, check in with that person. And that's a really great way of just loving your neighbor.
Dan and Brady.
Good. Well, if you don't mind, please.
Oh, problem. How do you help someone make it through a dark time? Or how can you help coworkers or friends that you see who are struggling?
Well, to make it through dark times, that's hitting me on. In my opinion, show up. You don't necessarily have to know what's going on. You just need to be able to feel it. You need to be able to feel that you're there. And I feel like that's something that is, as a society.
Did he freeze?
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
In my purpose,
Take it over, Dan.
Go for it,
it
Dan.
happens. Let me see if I can, let me see,
Oh, you got it now.
yeah, you might have.
Yeah, but yeah.
Let me send him a quick message now, and come back in real quick.
Well, Keith, do you want to share what we
Yeah,
find you?
so, we kind of touched on it a little bit already, where, we talk about showing up. It's just kind of, just like I said, it's like being present. And one of the things that I've learned going through this stuff as I deal with myself and my own struggles and my own battles is sometimes it's not really about always offering advice or offering suggestion or just being, talking to somebody. Sometimes it's just being available, just to listen. A lot of times when we go through stuff, sometimes all they really want to do is just have somebody listen to them. We don't need to fix the problem. We don't need to, push them to do certain things. They just want somebody that will be, a backboard. They'll just be a soundboard for somebody just to talk to. And I think that's one of the things that gets as like a misconception when it comes to this is people want to help so bad that they feel like they have to try to fix the solution, like fix the problem at hand when we're talking about something. When I'm having a moment, I'm going through something, I don't necessarily need somebody to try to fix my problem. I just need somebody to hear me out. And not just hear me out, but just be present in that situation and really not necessarily validate, but just hear where I'm coming from, hear what I'm saying. And I think a lot of times when people shut down, when we talk about mental health and go through these battles and these struggles, is when people don't feel like they can be heard, that's when you kind of start suppressing it and you just stop talking about stuff. And you start trying to do this battle on your own. And it gets really hard when you live like that. It gets really hard when you try to fight these demons on your own. It's a lot easier when you can fight with people who are willing to stand. So, like I said, I think it's more about listening than it is about fixing anything.
Yeah, that's a good point. They sometimes say we have 2 years to run now, so we should do twice as much listening. So, Katie, thoughts?
So one of the things, so kind of like within that same vein is, just like being able to like show up for people, but like I think also just like learning how to directly ask like what it is they need in that moment. This is something that I'm like really trying to work on. Like in theory, I know it, but then like if someone's going through a hard time, I'm like, let me fix you. Let's get glue and scissors and all the things, and it'll be fine. Like, and so like instead of just directly asking them like, hey, do you need to vent right now? Or do you like want to help problem solve and like come up with some solutions, and just directly asking them, because sometimes, all someone needs is to be able to say something, like the power of being able to say something out loud and have another person hear you. is like sometimes all that's really needed to like be able to, start to, set down whatever it is you're trying to get through. And so I think just like that direct ask of like, what can I help you with right now? And like, what is going to be best? And, it's like, if someone were to ask me that, I'd probably be like, let's do a little bit of both or something like that. But just being able to really, show up and directly ask someone like, how can I assist you in this moment?
And would you say, just to follow up, Katie, to what you said, is when you directly ask and your friend says, I need X, to just do what they say.
Yeah.
Even though you may not expect it or think that's the best solution or whatever, but just to
Right.
to act as they answered your question, right?
Yeah. Well, and show up and like help fulfill that need. And then, it's like if they do say like, hey, I just want to vent. And then like, maybe at the end of that, okay, they're done venting. And then like something pops up that you're just like, oh my gosh, I really think that this could be beneficial, or a solution. Say, hey, you know what, are you open to some feedback? Are you open to like, I just have this idea, and like, are you open to me sharing this with you? Or maybe like down the line, so it doesn't necessarily need to be in that moment, but I think that like form of engagement of like asking for like what direct need needs to be met, and then like before just like, because everyone is so solution oriented, and I think like what Dan said is so true of like, it's like people like want so badly to help that like you just immediately bypass the listening and you go to the fixing. And so that also then continuing that ask of like, are you open to an idea on this? Are you open to feedback on this? So
Hey, we have Brady again.
hello.
Welcome back.
Hi, Brady. Hi.
So Brady, so we're still on the question of how do you help someone make it through a dark time, or how can you help coworkers or friends that you see are struggling? And that's where we lost you.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt somebody who's talking.
No, you're good. So
Okay. Well, I mean, as I was saying, I think they just being there, and not just being there, showing that you're going to be there. I know if even if I didn't take people up listening to me, or I didn't, just knowing somebody's there for me to go to really helped me get through my darker times. And knowing that we care. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's not just a warm body in close proximity. It's somebody that genuinely cares about something. I feel like as a society we've forgotten to care about each other initially, and I think that's what really helped.
yeah. All right. So what would you say to someone who is struggling but doesn't want to move forward or seek help? Adam.
I am a big believer that anybody is always worth investing in. Like, it's so worth it to invest in yourself and say yes to yourself. So if there's somebody that's on the fence about therapy or mental health resources and utilizing them, it is worth it to invest in yourself. You are worth investing in yourself. And to put it in finance terms, tends to be a pretty good return on investment, pretty good ROI.
Any other thoughts? The rest of the panel?
Yeah, I have one. It might be an unpopular opinion. I'm known for unpopular opinions, but
Very much so.
yeah, and I don't mean this to come out crude, but like one of the things that I've learned over the years is that you can't hold other people accountable for themselves. They have to hold themselves accountable, and sometimes it's hard to realize that when you're trying to help somebody through a hard time. Like with myself, it's hard for me to accept what other people say when I'm going through something. And it's not until I kind of start believing in myself, I finally come to the realization, oh, oh, they made a really good point. It's hard to get past that point when you are living in a cloud of darkness. Like, you can't see past that sometimes. It's like a fog of war. Just kind of just walking through it. And the one thing that I tell people all the time is, we can sit here and talk until our face turns blue, and I can, give you X, Y, and Z advice on how to, help the situation, but it won't mean anything unless you believe in it yourself. And I think that that's the hardest part, and the most important part is to have somebody believe in themselves and find that little light, that little, whatever it is that keeps them going, to have them believe in that and have them hold themselves accountable, essentially, to move forward, to pick themselves back up. And it's hard to do when you are constantly in a dark cloud, and it kind of feels like you have this weighted blanket on you. But I can tell you from experience, when you get that little gleam and you see that little flicker inside you, just run to it. Don't even question it. Just run to it, because that right there is basically it's like your little inner soul trying to come free. It's trying to break through every negative, every bad thing that you're thinking about, all the anxiety, all the BS that you're going through. That little flicker that's it's trying to break through. It's trying to bring you back, and it's hard to accept it sometimes. But the minute you do, it's almost life changing.
All right, I have a follow-up to this question. How does a person know if they need to work alone or with a partner who might need help as well, since their issues are often shared and or affectful?
I'm not trying to be disheartening. No, it's the thing you do. You have to be willing to take that risk for your partner, for your brother, whoever it is. It's always a risk when you try. It's important to share what the dark place that you're in. How do you know? You just try.
Somebody posed a question one time where it was, how do we understand depression, or how does somebody understand depression? And the answer is you can't. I mean, how can you understand what depression is when you're going through it and you can't even understand what you're going through at that moment? So like you said, like Brady said, you have to almost take a chance, and taking chances are hard because you get so used to doing things a certain way and you get comfortable. But sometimes that being comfortable is what holds it back.
Also, if you're in therapy, ask your therapist. That's a great question to bring up in therapy. Is do you think that I would benefit from bringing in my partner, bringing in another person into our sessions, and your therapist can kind of give you some guidance about whether or not they think that would be helpful. And I don't think that healing happens alone. I think that there's absolutely room to do your own work and have that be a very personal, intimate, individual process. And I think healing happens in community. I think a lot of our healing happens through our relationships with other people and cultivating a sense of belonging. And so in that sense, I think that, other people are going to be part of anybody's healing process.
Thank you for the follow-up. All right, so moving on to the next question is, how do you think we can normalize the conversation about suicide or mental health? We'll start with Katie.
We're gonna be so tangled at the end. So I think one of the biggest things we can do, there's so much power that resides in the language that we use around these things. And one of the biggest things that I recently learned is talking about when we're talking about suicide and in particular, being able to be very conscious of the language we use in regard to it, and you know, instead of using you know, like the phrase like, oh, like you know, like this person you know, like took their own life, or they committed suicide, being able to rephrase and reframe that conversation of they died by suicide, because if you dissect it and you dissect that language of how you would talk about any other illness, you don't say that someone committed cancer. You don't say that someone committed, you know, like a horrific injury. And so being able to kind of take that step back and be able to really like use language that reinforces the idea that this is rooted in mental illness really starts to help, you know, like kind of normalize and put the, you know, put the power of that where it should lie. I think that's something that I just personally learned like over the last few weeks that has just like unlocked this total aha moment of like being able to like be just extra conscious and diligent about the language that we use around these.
How about you guys, Dan and Brady?
We use the term on our show quite often, an apologetic, because as a human, that's what we are. And it's human nature, I think. And if you really want to normalize having a conversation about suicide and mental health, you can't sugarcoat it. And you have to have hard conversations, because they are hard conversations to have. And when we normalize having hard conversations, honest conversations, and we do that globally, and I'm not saying this between two people, I'm talking social media, you talk about it, you know, advertising, you bring it up, you have to be uncomfortable with it if you really want to try to normalize this, because like I said, sometimes being comfortable will hold you back, and hard conversations are uncomfortable to have. But having those conversations is how we take this step forward to normalize everything there is about mental health. And it's not easy. It's really hard. You know, it's like rehabbing an injury. You know, it sucks and it's hard to do, but it hurts because we're growing. And sometimes, you know, growth, whether it's good or bad, I mean, growth is growth. And having those hard conversations can open up things that you're not ready to talk about. And the hard part about that is just, you know, trying to get through and survive the things that you can't talk about.
And it's, I mean, and when you think about it, you know, that's how we learn. I mean, from the smallest child that we have, the smallest child you learn by doing. It's gonna be hard, yeah, but you keep doing it, make mistakes. Us as a human being, we're predisposed to be able to learn that way. That's why it's you're not gonna have to conversations, because that's how we learn. Is when we're comfortable in situations.
Any other thoughts or insights?
Yeah, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I don't think we're gonna normalize it in our lifetime. Are we gonna get more comfortable with it? Yes. Is it gonna become more normalized in our child and their child's lifetime? I hope so, but in our lifetime, I don't see it being normalized as we think of normal.
Alright, so do you have an experience with intervening with someone who has expressed an intention of self-harm? Matt, would you like to, you have the mic.
Yes. I'm gonna read this because it's gonna be much easier for me, because it is emotional. When I was in 9th grade, one of my best friends called me and told me, this call is to say goodbye. Her voice was off. I remember thinking, what should I do? I kept her on the phone as long as I could. I remember learning earlier that year that asking questions about anything to delay the action of the person can save lives. As I was talking, I was going through a school notebook looking for a number I wrote down from a class that talked about suicide. I wrote the number down with the thought, I'll never need this, but it was good to have. The phone number was the phone number of the assistant principal of the school. As I hung up with her, I called the assistant principal and told him what had taken place. He made it to her house a half mile away before I did, and I was only 3 to 4 blocks away. He was able to talk with her and get her the help she needed. To this day, she does not know that I was the one that called the assistant principal for help because I didn't know what to do. I could help on my own a little, but not the help that she needed. One of the most valuable things I learned way back then was it's okay not to be okay all the time, but it is not okay to want to harm yourself, but it is okay to ask for help. My friend now has 2 beautiful daughters and 3 adorable grandsons that are the light of her life.
Thank you for sharing. Dan and Brady.
I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of great conversations. Tough conversations with people that are in the crisis, but I can see how you would go through it regularly. I used to judge myself in conversations. I hope so.
I'm delaying for a second because I do have an experience with somebody. I don't know if I have consent to talk about a story, so I'm not going to. But I can speak on the back half of that where I was going through a moment on my own, and Brady was actually the person that I confided and spoke to. It was just sometimes when you go through it, you kind of get hit with a lot of things at one time, and it kind of clogs up the way that you think about life. And I had thoughts that I had not had for years, and it was during a really bad time for me mentally, going through some stuff between switching jobs. I experienced something on a job site where I almost lost my life, and it had me kind of thinking about things, and it put myself in a situation where I was trying to balance processing what I was going through and trying to be present at home. And I was doing a pretty decent job of being present at home, but I was doing a terrible job of being present for myself. And it led me down a road that I tried to swear to myself years and years ago that I never got in. And luckily, Brady was available to speak to that day. And I'll be honest with you, if I was able to have that conversation with Brady, I don't really know what would have happened. And I'm grateful that he was available for that conversation. I divulged a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't talk about with a lot of other people. I impacted a lot of things that have been locked away for years. Like I said, if I didn't have Brady for that day, I don't know what would have happened. So I'm grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing. Just to keep moving along, looking at time, what is the biggest misconception about mental health? We'll start with me.
So I know this is all just from my own experience, but I think one of the biggest misconceptions about it is that it's something that is, controllable, or that it's, it's like, if you're experiencing, anxiety, depression, whatever it is that that's going on for you, that it's like, if you just like were a little bit more positive, or if you were just like, you know, like, well, focus on the bright side, or like, when it's sunny out, or, you know, like, just like this, that it's this idea that like someone is willingly or willfully like not doing or choosing to live within. And I think that is, you know, like one of kind of the most pervasive ideas that kind of sets it as this thing where, you know, it's like a switch that someone is intentionally not flipping, when that, you know, is not how that actually works. So whether or not that's actually the biggest one, I have no idea, but in my brain it is.
There you go. How about Dan and Brady?
If you don't mind, I'd like to say a little bit to misconceptions. As we've said here, we're in the focus and this happens to all people, but is that you have to face it. That you don't want, a lot of people say you know, there might be nobody would understand and stuff like that. That I feel, especially among men, is one of the biggest problems, and one of the biggest stigmas about this thing of face alone. And I mean, there's definitely one thing there.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback a little bit off of Brady said, everybody seems to fight different battles, but we're all fighting the same common enemy. You know, you don't have to do it alone. And you know what I think one of the biggest misconceptions about everything is that you're not wrong. Like, people who deal with anxiety, battle anxiety, or have like suicidal thoughts, you're gonna have certain thoughts about things. And as weird as it sounds, that's normal for somebody that's battling through that. So you're not wrong. It's not invalid. Like, you're not invalid because you have those thoughts. You understand that if you're going through that, those thoughts that you're having, it's normal for somebody in that situation, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to feel that. So you're not being, you know, you're not invalid. You're not wrong. You're just human. You're going through things, and you know, I hate when people, you know, when people talk about when you're going through something. They always think, well, I'm broken. I'm not broken. You know, broken is something that can't be fixed. You know, you can still be not repaired, but you can still put things back together. We're not broken. Right? We're just you know, kind of like a old car coming down the highway, buttering along. You know, you just get some TLC, or like what we used to say on our podcast, just some duct tape. It's a tie with a steam, and just trying to keep it moving.
Duct tape solves so many problems.
Oh, yes.
Maddie?
I think a big misconception of mental health is that you only take care of it, or the people that only do something about it are the people that are unwell. And much in the same way that everybody has a body, everybody has mental health. And so you go to the doctor, you get a physical, even if there's not necessarily anything wrong, so to speak. It can still be helpful just to know what's going on in your body. And I think about that with mental health as well. Everybody has mental health. That would be like saying Broken Clock is only for people that like beer. Heck no, right? Broken Clock's a community resource, right? Like, even if you don't like craft beer, this is a welcoming space. People can enjoy it and benefit from it, even if you're not a craft beer connoisseur. It's the same thing with mental health. You don't have to be unwell, so to speak, in order to benefit from investing in yourself and mental health.
We have 2 more questions. I have. So, what experiences in your life, your work, or your family inform your understanding of mental health? It's 8.
So just like from like personal experience, one of the biggest things that's informed my own mental health and my own journey with like learning how to take care of it is, you know, starting to understand post-traumatic stress disorder and how that manifests itself. I'm a sexual assault survivor. And so going through that experience of learning what PTSD is, learning how it manifests itself, learning and understanding like, you know, kind of what those things are and how they present themselves and being able to use that as a way to kind of go like, okay, it's not, I don't have these weird idiosyncrasies. Like these are things that have been created in my brain because of an experience that I went through. And so being able to start, like dissecting those things from that lens has been something that's really important. And just like knowing and understanding, like what a safe environment looks like, whether that's at work, whether that's, like in my personal life, whether that's when I'm out, and really kind of utilizing that as a lens and the information that's there. So.
And the last question I have, this is from Sentin Vieslayo, is we hear there's a shortage of mental health professionals since the pandemic began. How do you find a counselor, therapist, or mediator who might help?
I just immediately was like,
Right,
I know.
So, yeah, a big issue is, well, I'll be honest, insurance is a big piece of it. It's been a real tough cookie. But yeah, if there is a shortage of mental health providers, there's an unmet need, and especially with COVID, we're experiencing collective trauma. And so it's tough, as a clinician, how do you show up and be present as you're also experiencing the collective trauma yourself? So if you're thinking about becoming a therapist, please do it. And if you're thinking about therapy, I think Psychology Today is an awesome resource. I think just doing a quick Google search of therapists near me. What's super cool is with Psychology Today, it's like Yelp for therapists. Okay, so you can kind of set a filter of, I want a therapist that's LGBTQ affirming, or I want a therapist that's also a pastor, or I want a therapist that is a person of color, right? So it's really awesome that now we live in a world where the internet exists and you can kind of tailor therapy to your needs. So Psychology Today is an awesome resource. The internet's a wonderful resource. And also, if you ever want any referrals, hit me up.
Here's a follow-up question to it. If you find it, let's say you go to Psychology Today, you find a psychologist, you go, and it just doesn't seem like a good fit. Should you keep trying? Like, what would you recommend to that?
Oh, please tell them that. I always tell my clients when I meet with them upon intake, I'm like, treat today like a trial run. It's super normal to go through a couple different providers until you find one that's a good fit. And what's important to your therapist or to the person that you're working with is that you feel like this is a good use of your time and resources in a way that's helpful. And if you're not feeling like that, it is really okay, and it's truly not, it's just helpful to name that and to say, hey, this isn't it for me. And part of the ethics of my profession is that if I hear that from a client, then it's my obligation, or I want to find them a referral for somebody that I think would be a better fit. So you won't hurt a therapist's feelings by saying that. It's really helpful actually to hear that from somebody, and it's normal to go through a couple different people before you find your person.
Very much.
Any other thoughts on that question?
I would actually, I realize it's a little strange that I have to ask the question, but to comment on that, I at least over here with us, the text therapy and the newer, what I consider kind of the newer age has seemed to take on, at least judging by the heads that I'm starting to see. I'd like to ask the mental health professional and how do you feel about those? Would you recommend those as a good option, at least as a step off point to start getting more comfortable seeking counseling?
Heck yeah, the future is now. If text therapy works for you and you find it helpful and meaningful, go for it. I have a Google Voice number, and I will text with clients sometimes during a session. And yeah, I think if texting works for you, again, you live in the future is now, go for it.
I think it's really important that you do what you're comfortable with and what works for you. You can go to a therapist and talk to them and not feel like you're making any kind of headway. If that's where you're at, you need to move on. If you want to see results and move forward, it's partly you and it's partly the therapist, but you have to recognize that and make that decision and find somebody that fits you. And if that's texting, video, in person, you need to do what works for you, and you're the only one that can say what works for you.
Well, those are all the questions that I had, so, do you guys have closing thoughts, parting words, insights? Wrapping it up and making.
It's, I would like to reiterate what I've touched on today is, take that first step as soon as you're comfortable. But all you ask is human beings is please take that first step. With us, with the advances, like I'm going to show you. Reach out to someone, doesn't have to be us. We are not trained mental health professionals, but we care. And you're a person. You're no less important than the next person. So please reach out and do as much as you can to destigmatize these conversations. I mean, we're doing this in a public area. I mean, anybody would have told me that 20 years ago. I probably laughed, to be completely honest. So, keep going.
Yeah, look, we've evolved, right? You know, we're talking about things publicly. People are getting comfortable talking about mental health. We're getting comfortable, talking about this stuff, trying to end the stigma. Like I said at the beginning, just be honest with yourself, be honest with people, because if you really want change, you can't keep living in the same situation that you're in. You can't be in the same surrounding and expect change. You have to get out of it somehow, one way or another. Like Brady touched on it, we say often, like everybody else says, it's okay to not be okay. But one of the other things that we say often on our show is, it's iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. And I think we just need to be human beings and learn to care and be there for one another. Really want to try to make an end in this whole ending the stigma about mental health.
Yeah, I think just one thing that I wanted to add is that there do exist some really amazing resources out there. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, is a really incredible resource. They have like state by state resources. I think even like region by region resources. They do all sorts of like trainings. Earlier this week, I attended a QPR class, which is Question, Persuade, and Refer, and it's a suicide prevention class that they have. Minnesota does that. It's like all over nationwide. And then the other thing too is the national number 988. So if there's if in doubt, and like one thing that I learned in the QPR class is like, if in doubt, like just share that number with someone. You can call it, you can text. There are resources that exist. So if you do, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and so if you do want to attend a class like that or something like that, there is just insanely wonderful resources that do exist if you want to learn more or get more involved in those things. So thank you, everybody.
I want to thank Vicki for volunteering for being our monitor. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Brady, and your podcast has been awesome for me. My husband also listens to it, but he got the second or third session and realized that there was bourbon being talked about, and so now we have more bourbon in our house than we have anything else. Their podcast is Men in Your Life, Unapologetically Human. It is for men, but I listen to it all the time. That's how I ended up finding them. it's great. I take a lot away from it, and it helps me understand where my husband and my son are coming from with their mental health. So, Katie, thank you for being here from Infinite. I can't ever say that. Infinite Ingredient. And Maddie as our in-house therapist. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank the panel for giving up your time and sharing your stories. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us your insights in life and profession. So those that are here in person and online, thank you for being a part of this conversation and listening. And let's just keep showing up for one another and keep talking. And let's make this a normal conversation, not a one-time event. So thank you all, and let's go have some more happy bisons. Okay.
Yeah, me too. We're two.
All right, we'll try and send them out there for you guys.
Thank you.
You guys have a good run. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
You too.
Stanford.
Wait, I don't know where to wait.
Where do I find the stop? End stream. There we go.